Hello, welcome to another public speaking video. I think in this video, what I'd like to do is kind of talk, in the next couple of videos, I'm going to talk about the first speeches a little bit and some of the things that I think you could improve on. But I think a lot of it will have to do with maybe being a little bit more specific about the rubric and the things that I'm looking for. I think that should be pretty good. Of course, turn your phone off when you're doing any kind of talking is kind of essential. So, in this quick video, we'll be going over the rubric in a little bit more detail. And I'll talk about the things that you guys did well and the things that maybe you can work on in terms of some of the things I'm looking for that I think are the markers of excellent speech and excellent oratory. The purpose of all of this is to get you to be able to come up with strategies and ways to influence the minds of others and the actions of others when you only have your words, when you don't have, when you're not their boss or you have some power over them, or you can like pay them to do something. You can just hire them and make them do it. Those are not properly the realm of rhetoric. They have rhetorical implications and aspects to them. But it's the question of the class is, how do you do things with words? How do you make people want to do what you'd like them to do, or want to feel what you'd like them to feel, or want to believe what you'd like them to believe? So, for those of you randomly finding this video, this is all for my online speech class at St. John's, beautiful St. John's here. I like sitting here right on the edge of Utopia Parkway and lecturing because I can breathe in the fresh bus fumes of the Q30 and Q31. It's really nice kind of fresh air right here. And I also like to block traffic in my office chair. Just kind of sit here and have everyone get mad at me. But that's enough of that. It's time to go look at the rubric. So here's the rubric for every speech that you'll do in this class. And what I'm looking for is that you think about these questions and try to apply your own answer to each one. So we'll go down these questions in a little bit of detail, and maybe I can make them a little bigger. Is that too big? No, actually, that's pretty good. So let's go down each of them in detail, and we will figure out what you might do and what you might not do for some of these things. Okay, so the first one. Do you start with a good hook that indicates the importance or interest of your topic? This, the book, and some of the other readings that you have for the class talks about this as the exordium, which is a very, very old, tiny word for introduction. So what does it mean to have a good hook, and what does it mean to establish importance and interest of your topic? It's twofold. It's not just that you're interested in it, that you think it's good and important, but also that the audience sees that it's important and valuable to them. Public speaking, oratory, rhetoric, it's all about the audience. If you can't get the audience to understand why they should listen, that's the end of it. They're going to daydream. They're going to pretend to listen. All those wonderful things you do in class when you don't think that what the professor is saying is relevant to you, or what the teacher is saying is relevant to you. We're very good at tuning things out. Think of how many advertisements we hear every day. Think about how much noise from radio and television we get every day. Think about how easy it is to ignore your phone when you're watching a really good show on Netflix. We're very attuned. We've adapted to that because we're assaulted by interruptions all the time. So with that in mind, we have to think about how do we make the audience think and believe and feel that what we have to say is incredibly relevant to them. So there's some ways to this that some of you guys were very good at, asking questions and things like that, but it was very vague. Try to be a little bit more specific with that. Think about what the audience is on the mind of the audience based on what's in the news, what's going on in the world. What might they be concerned about? What might be on their mind? What might they be thinking about? And also try to show them either the payoff or why they should be interested. For audiences who might already kind of know that they're interested in your talk, you want to think about the concept of value added. I'll put that in here too. So what's the value added to the conception that you're giving by giving a speech about it? What value am I going to get out of it by listening to you? So there are other ways to it. You can tell a story. A lot of you told very compelling stories. A lot of you can provide information that's sort of impressive, or information that makes me go, wow, how did they get that? How did they know that? What does this mean for me? Any kind of information, it's like, oh, what am I going to do about this? What does this mean for me? I didn't know that. Are all indicators that you might know more. So they're all reasons for people to listen to you. So when it says important and interest, you can also communicate your own interest. Like, why did you choose to talk about this? What's in it for you? Why are you interested in it? And absolutely not, under any circumstances, should you start your speech by saying, hey, this is my speech. For my speech, I chose to talk about. What that does is it creates a wall. So you're saying this is fake. This is a class assignment. This is fake. This is something I did as a school exercise. It's the difference between writing an essay for a teacher and writing an essay for publication. Everything in this class is for publication. We're putting it on Anchor. We're putting it on YouTube. People can find it. And you don't want them thinking, oh, well, this is just a class exercise, when you could have influence over someone's thoughts and maybe improve their life. Some of you are talking about very heavy stuff, and you really do have the chance to improve people's lives with what you're saying. So don't miss out on that by saying, hey, this is Alec, and good morning. I mean, don't say good morning or good afternoon. You don't know what time anyone's listening to this. So start with something that immediately hooks them. Don't say, so I chose to do my speech about blah, blah, blah. Here we go. That after the here we go, that's where you should start. No preamble, nothing else. Just start. Okay, let's look at the second rubric question. Are you exciting and interesting to listen to? Okay, what does that mean? It means you have some passion. It means that you're easy to understand. You're not talking too fast. It means you have some variety in your voice. You're not just reading a script. A lot of you are reading something you wrote, and that's fine. But instead of reading a script, why not just have some notes and kind of talk about them, or talk about the essay or the things you wrote? That might be better. Are you accessible to your audience? Now, what does that mean? This means, are you using words in a way of speaking that the audience can understand? This isn't like the removal of slang or anything like that. It's just, if you're going to use slang and you're going to use shorthand, like abbreviations and things, are you sure that the audience knows those abbreviations? Are you sure that they know what you're talking about? Do you make it clear who you think the audience is and should be? Now, this is kind of a weird one, because a lot of the ancient rhetors, particularly some of the Romans, believed that you could change somebody's character with the right words. You could change how they were, whether they were a good or bad person. You said the right thing to them. So this is echoed in Quintilian, and Cicero believed this as well, that if you were good and you spoke good words, the audience would also be moved to be good and act good in the world. I don't know how true that is, but there is something about a good speaker can change an audience into their aspirational selves. So an audience might be very cynical. They might come to your speech to make fun of it. They might think that you're kind of a dreamer or some kind of silly person in a silly politics. But if you give a good speech and you really resonate with them in your tone, you seem friendly, you seem down to earth, you seem like the kind of person that they would want to hang out with, that you're treating them like an equal, then they're going to be inspired. They're going to say, wow, this is like something I could do too. Or wow, this person and I, we have so much in common. Maybe I should consider being more involved in that, or maybe I should consider having those beliefs. So you can change your audience into what it is. Don't be cynical about who's listening to you. You can get anyone interested in anything. You have the power to do it because you have a good mind, and you have a voice, and you have amazing access to technology for them to access it. So make sure it's something that people want to listen to, and that you're addressing them where they are, and you're giving them a tone and a kind of a perspective to make them where that you want them to be. Even if it's something, I mean, a lot of you are talking about sports. I'm fine with that. But even if it's something like sports, you want to inspire the listener to be a better consumer and fan of sports by having better standards for who they admire, or better standards for who they think a better team is and why they should support one team or another, or these evergreen debates about who's the best player of X sport, which I think are great to have, and they're wonderful for you to weigh in on that. But make sure that you're not just assuming the audience will listen to the same stats as you, that they also could be transformed into the kind of person, the kind of sports fan you would want them to be. Do you have a clear theme or topic? Now, this one, you guys didn't really do too bad on this one. You have a clear theme, topic, or point. Is it something the audience could easily repeat to someone when they ask what it was about? Most of you did great on this. What this one is supposed to do is keep you focused. So sometimes you'll have a topic like, for example, LeBron is the best basketball player of all time. Several people did that topic, and it's a good topic. It's a specific topic, as the textbook would say. The general topic would be something like, what makes an excellent basketball player? The more general kind of topic. So that could be a speech that you could do, or you could do LeBron is the best basketball, or Michael Jordan is the best basketball player of all time. Either one is fine, but they're very different kinds of calls. But the important thing is no matter what your thesis, you don't want to get off on a sidetrack. For example, if your speech is about why LeBron James is the best NBA player of all time, you don't want to go off on too much of a tangent about other players. Anything you bring in has to refer back to that thesis and prove it. So obviously you're going to have to talk about Michael Jordan to win that argument. Obviously you're going to have to talk about Magic Johnson, Larry Bird. You're going to have to talk about probably Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I don't know who else is in that conversation. I'm trying to think. There's a lot of basketball players who could be considered the greatest of all time. So you don't want to get too far afield on Jordan. Likewise, if you're giving the speech, what makes an excellent basketball player, which is the sort of the general case, you're looking to principles and examples of principles. You don't want to go on a long diatribe about LeBron. He becomes an example for the kinds of things that we should look for in an excellent basketball player. Same thing with you guys who are talking about your family. Like, there were a lot of inspirational speeches about people's grandmothers. I think that's great. It's really interesting. But what was missing was, why should I admire your grandmother? Right? It's obvious you do. You had a lot of evidence for that, but why should I do it? And so there need to be some standards to keep it focused on, like, what makes someone an admirable person? What qualities in general would we look for someone to be admirable, no matter who they are? Or perhaps grandmother is a kind of a role, and so we would look to things like, how much baking does she do for me or something? That's kind of that's a pretty selfish principle. Maybe if she's a good teacher and listener. I'm not sure what you might pick, but what was missing was this kind of connection. I mean, it's too easy of a thesis to prove that your grandmother is awesome and not. It's kind of like I'm watching you admire someone. I want to feel that I could admire this person too. And so does your audience. So providing those kind of standards, I think, make the speech more like, oh, it was about what makes a person admirable, and this person admires the grandma. I think that's a fantastic way to do it, to kind of stretch it out just a bit more and make sure that we have some kind of handhold, some way to hold on to get something out of it more than sort of watching you admire somebody. Okay, let's go to the next one. This is one where a lot of people had trouble. Do you develop your topic or theme with interesting supporting points containing examples, research, and other forms of proof? We might need to do some more sort of intensive stuff looking at this in the textbook, which I have right here. That's what it looks like. In the textbook, there's several good chapters about how to create proof and how to create support. And maybe we should go through those in detail in a couple of class lectures. You can create proof from reasoning, from common sense. You can create proof from emotions and how people feel about things. And you can create proof from character, from goodwill, and from people's credibility. You can also look for evidence in things that are not that fungible, that aren't that fluid. So you can go and do research on things. One of the things that I think all of you could benefit from in your speeches is you say things that are, I wouldn't challenge the facts that you bring in the speeches. They seem reasonable to me. So that's logos. But there are people out there who will discount your speech on questions of ageism, sexism, arbitrary things like your accent, things like that. People will judge it on that. And they'll say, yeah, but that's just some college kid. Why should I believe them? Or yeah, that's just some girl from Brooklyn. Why should I believe her? She sounds like my cousin. Right? And so people, I hate to say it, but we're not as rational and kind and logical as we pretend we are. We're pretty superficial, and we're pretty catty and pretty nasty about how we believe people and why we believe people. So how do we hedge against that? Well, when I talk about examples in research, you might groan and say, oh no, now I got to provide 5 sources from the library or something like that. No, that's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying you want to bring other voices other than your own into your speech to prove what you're saying is something to be believed. How do we do that? Look around at publications that have a stake in being accurate and good. Major publications. They're all over the world. The first one that comes to mind is some place to find really good voices would be the BBC, the British Broadcasting Company. That's an international news organization that is funded by the British government and overseen by a board of governors who look at excellence in information gathering, some of the finest journalism in the world. You can also look locally to the New York Times, another news organization that, although the president says they're failing New York Times, their economic failure is just based on the fact that people don't really buy newspapers that much anymore. Maybe your parents or grandparents do, or maybe you do. Maybe you like the newspaper. It is pretty convenient and doesn't need to be charged when you're on the subway. You can read all about the world's events and different perspectives on it. That one's a good one too, because their economic model is based on being trustworthy, based on being believable. So they're going to go to great lengths to make sure that they don't put anything in there that could be discounted. But there's tons of journals in the library too. Any of them that are peer-reviewed or published there, I think would be good. And what you're looking for is the testimony of experts. So instead of telling me you got it from a study or you got it from the New York Times, that's a little bit better. You want to say, Dr. Smith, who is an expert on blah, 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 was quoted in the New York Times as saying, now there you go. Now you have the voice of a doctor, a researcher, a professional who's also supporting your view. So a lot of you are talking about mental health. I think that's a topic that if you haven't talked about, you probably will talk about. And it's all around us. Everyone's talking about mental health these days, which I think is good. It's good that we're all discussing it, and it's a hot topic, and everyone wants to share their opinion on it. If you give really good advice on how to handle mental health in your friends or family, unfortunately, it might not be listened to unless you add the voices of therapists, doctors, and researchers to the conversation. And you're the gatekeeper on that. You bring those quotes in, but they're supporting you. You're not just reporting what you found in the library. Those quotes support your view. So they might not be 100% on what you'd like to do, but they support. They're in the spirit of they support. And it's like, hey, this doctor said this doctor said this. So based on that, I think we should do X. And that's a wonderful way to make wonderful appeals that people will say, wow, this college kid is quoting all these professional researchers. Okay, maybe I thought I knew more than a college kid. Maybe I'd better listen up. Maybe I'd better take some notes. All it does is, and it's so easy to do, you find the quote in the story, you don't know who this person is. Google their name. Their biography will come up. Look at that. Talk about their accomplishments and really talk these people up. You're like an attorney making a case. These are your witnesses. You want your witnesses to be unimpeachable, as Cicero said. What does it mean to be unimpeachable? That means that no one would even think, there's nothing at all wrong about them and their point of view that could be questioned. They are stand-up people who do things right, and they're excellent researchers, and they're people who we should trust because the standards of work that they have consistently followed prove that they are committed, dedicated, thoughtful people. So that's what I'm looking for here. I'm not looking for like a giant bibliography or anything, but some quotes from some people who agree with you and agree with you triangularly. Maybe like that you can triangulate a position off of it. You don't need someone saying exactly what you're saying. For those of you doing sports, the opinion of well-known sports writers, I think, would be good. Who's won a Pulitzer Prize for sports journalism? If that guy is quoting and saying something similar to what you're saying, that's awesome. Put it in there. If somebody is a well-known national news commentator on ESPN and they agree with you, put it in there. These things can only make your speech better. Okay, organization. That's the next one. Is your presentation well organized? What does that mean? Well, it means, does it follow an order that makes sense, or do you just jump around from subtopic to subtopic? You probably have 3 or 4 things you want to cover to prove your thesis. That's great. One of the big problems here is transitions. You're doing a good order. It makes sense to me where you're pursuing certain questions. If you're having trouble with basic organization, I would say think about questions that need to be answered from the audience's point of view to prove the thesis. So if you want to say LeBron is the greatest NBA player of all time, or it's incredibly important for you to vote. The questions the audience might have on voting, well, does voting really matter? What about this electoral college thing? And is voting safe under COVID? And isn't voting like manipulated? I heard the president questioning mail ballots validity. Is voting like, isn't my vote just going to get tossed out in investigation? And I don't like either candidate. Why should I vote? Okay, so there's 4 points right there that I could build my speech around, just based on putting myself in the viewpoint of the audience and saying, okay, what would I want to hear about on a speech like this? Likewise for like your grandma. Okay, what has she done to deserve admiration? What is it? What is an admirable person like? Why did you pick her over your other family members? This kind of thing. Or for like LeBron James, like what has he done? How long has he played? How many points has he scored? What kind of moves can he do that other people can't do? How many championships has he won? These are all basic factual questions, but they would be in there as well as some more complex ones like, what does it mean to be a great player? What does it mean to be someone who's admired? Is he admired by other players? What does it mean to be excellent at basketball? Is it just scoring points or is it something else? I mean, this is a team sport after all, right? So why are we saying who's the best player? Why aren't we saying who's the best team? Questions like that might be good for organization. Now, transitioning between them, you want to make phrases between your points that show the audience that you're moving from one point to another. So now that we've examined LeBron's early career, let's talk about LeBron as a guard. Is he a good guard or as a forward or whatever position he plays? I don't really know about sports, so probably a bad example for me, but you understand what I mean. Now that I've shown you how hard my grandmother's young life was, I want to talk to you about how she met my grandfather and how their family was when she was first here in New York, or something like that. So you're telling the audience why you're moving to the next point based on what was accomplished in the last point. Those need to be there because those things make it easy for people to understand, which is here as a part of the rubric. Remember, nobody's really writing down what you're saying. They're going to keep it in their head. So think about the best way to compartmentalize and put things together so that someone can carry your ideas around in their head, because that's what you want them to do. You want them to carry it around in their head, so it makes it easy because they're excited about your ideas. They want to share it with somebody else. They're like, oh, I heard this great speech today. Here's what they said. They said this, this, this. You want it to be accurate. So you got to make it in a way, and people's memory is not very good these days. People rely on their phone for everything. People don't have any phone numbers memorized. It's a different world. People's memories adjust to the circumstances. So you want to think about that and how to organize it to make it memorable. Finally, the last thing, and you guys did this pretty well, but it could use some improvement. Do you conclude strongly with a charge to the audience of something to consider, think about, or take with them? This is the thing that's going to move them into the next step. You've inspired them. You've got them thinking about your topic. What do they do next? Where do they go next? What do they read next? What do they listen to next? What should they do the next time they encounter somebody? Someone gave a great speech about Down syndrome. That was a wonderful speech. So a good way to conclude that is like the next time you encounter someone with Down syndrome, how should you approach them? Autism as well. That's another one. Somebody gave a speech on that. How do I, if I know someone is autistic or they confide that in me, how should I treat them? What's the appropriate way to interact with this person? Where can I go to read more about that? These kind of things are really important. So it doesn't have to be like a wham, here's the end of my speech, and boom, I've blown your mind. It doesn't have to be that. It's kind of like a move to the next step of what the audience should do if they were inspired by your words and they agree with you. They're going to want to act. They're going to want to change. They're going to want to like, oh, I really like this new belief system. I'd like to know more about it. What could I read? And a lot of you were just like, okay, thanks for listening to my speech. Peace out. Okay, that's not very inspirational. That's like you're so happy to leave that they like question whether they should really like what they heard, Gosh, does she really care about me that much if this is how she's leaving? Gosh, I don't know about this. So you don't want to end like that or say, well, that was my speech. Hope you guys liked it. Now, some of you are doing the like embodying the podcast thing, which I think is great. So how do you end a podcast? You like thank everyone for listening to the episode and encourage them to go look at other episodes, give them your website, or maybe leave them with a question to think about before you do all that stuff. That might bring them back. I think ending a speech with a question is also good. Like, if we don't take this issue seriously, who will? What kind of future will we have? Unless we take it seriously, we might not ever know. That might be a good way to conclude. So I'm a big fan of giving the audience something to do or look at or investigate, because if you've done your job well up until that point, they're going to be kind of primed to move forward on these ideas. They'll be like, wow, I had no idea global warming was going to affect fisheries like that, and I love eating fish. What can I do to help with this? What can I do? How can I become active in this cause? Or maybe they want to share some of the information on mental health that you've shared. Oh, I think my mother might be depressed. What can I do for her? Where do I go? Where can I intervene? And you can give them some advice of people to talk to, things to read. It's a wonderful way to make sure they take your speech. And I think one of the most beautiful compliments of a speech isn't, oh, you sound so good or you're so organized. No, the most beautiful compliment that you can get from a speech is for someone to incorporate what they've said into their life. I mean, that's just like, if you think about that, they're taking your words and they're bringing them into their mind and making them their own. So it's this incredibly intimate type of sharing, or a kind of like bond making, or Kenneth Burt called it consubstantiality, making one's motives commensurate with someone else's motives. So we often tend to approach speech with like, oh, here are all these dumbasses that need to be convinced, and they're kind of dumb, and I wonder if they'll be able to pull their heads out of their ass for 5 minutes to hear about my speech. This is the wrong way to approach it. You want to approach it to where they're looking for something to add to their life. Now, how do you provide words that are going to be attractive and powerful enough that they're going to want to bring into their soul, bring into their life, bring into their mind, and act on as if it was their idea? So that's what we're looking to practice in this class. And this rubric kind of helps us get those basics to get to the level where we're trying to transform people with our words. So that's kind of what we're looking for. Hopefully the rubric is helpful here. If you have any questions, please hit me up on the Discord, email me. You can text me. You have all the different ways to contact me, and I really don't mind being contacted at any time. We can set up an appointment and talk in detail. Happy to help you with any of that. And just think about these questions anytime you put a speech together. And for those of you watching who aren't in the class, when you put a speech together, these questions are a very powerful way to make sure you've covered all your bases if your goal is to really influence people. Not to tell them they're wrong, not to get them to change their mind 100% or any of this nonsense that we get from our polarized political world, but influencing them to take some of your words and make them their own. That's the way we change the world. That's the power of oratory and rhetoric. And I really like practicing it, and we're going to continue to practice it. So let me know if you have any questions about this, and I will see you in the next video. Or wave at me if you're driving by on Utopia Parkway. Oh, there goes somebody now. Hey.